All right, here's a few news articles that I thought were interesting. In the UK, they want to set up a register for AI professionals like doctors and lawyers where you can get kicked off for bad behavior. Now, this is something that has come up many times in the United States, and for years the big argument was nobody knows what a security professional should know, but the de facto registration system is the CISSP. Pretty much everybody in the field has to get a CISSP, and it does have requirements just like a lawyer. If there are ethics complaints against you and you don't resolve them, it gets removed. In practice, that has not worked out very well, although I don't imagine it's worked out very well for lawyers either. But anyway, it serves this purpose. But it's not officially required. It's by the government. It's just that most large companies will want you to have it. Like I say, when I started being a military contractor, some of my friends couldn't get in because they didn't have certs. They like you to have certs. Anyway, so they want to make a special one just for AI in the European Union, in UK, and we'll see how this goes. There's a widespread belief among government agencies that the internet got out of control because the government didn't regulate it enough. Now, it is true that the government didn't regulate it, hardly at all, and then we ended up with being all full of porn and malware and spam. So that's what happened. Now, I highly doubt that if the government regulated it, they would have prevented that, but it's possible. For example, they regulated broadcast TV and telephone, and there's somewhat less of that stuff. Anyway, all the agencies are now scrambling to try to make rules for AI. I'm very skeptical about them. I think they don't understand what the risks are well enough. But anyway, they're all scrambling to make it at least look like they did something about AI. Anyway, I think there's no chance of this happening here. They've never been able to pass a federal rule requiring anything. There have been many, many attempts to do it. I remember 15 years ago, Texas passed a law. They were worried about amateurs working on computer systems and destroying data that was useful for a criminal investigation. So they passed a law that every technician that touches a hard drive has to be a licensed private investigator. And in Texas, that requires like 5 years of experience. So the only people that can possibly get it are ex-military. And when they found out what that meant, they said, oh, we didn't really mean that. So I know, there's been a lot of argument about this. Should people that handle computer systems have to prove that they're worthy in some way? And in practice, we have nothing like that here. Anybody can just put up a sign and say, I'm a computer tech, bring your stuff to me, and there's no credentialing system or anything. Whereas you can't do that if you're a lawyer or a doctor. So this is the first time this has happened, apparently. This is something people worry about a lot. When you have devices with facial identification, they say, what if somebody steals my face? And Apple, it goes to great pains to say, when they scan your face, they use a laser to do it in 3 dimensions, so it's very hard to fool. Just a picture of your face will not do. And they don't store a literal picture of your face. They store some kind of derived number, which supposedly cannot be used to reconstruct your face. But apparently, they've got it working in, I think, Vietnam. They have tricked people into installing an Android and iOS app, and that app performs a biometric check. So they convince you this app is coming from your bank, and after they get it, they then bypass the same checks used by legitimate banking apps. So they appear to have reverse engineered the real banking app, figured out how the face identification works, and made a fake scanner that will gather that data. So this is pretty easy for Android. We're doing it in the web hacking and the mobile device hacking class. If you Android apps, it's very easy to copy the code, read the code. You could totally find the face identification code and just copy it and put it in your version of the app. It's harder to do that in iOS, but apparently they've done it. So in Thailand, they're doing it, and Vietnam. So anyway, it's important as proof of concept. Everyone worried about biometrics. This is the fundamental problem with biometrics. We're all moving this way. People are finally getting fed up with passwords, so now they use face scans or fingerprints, but the problem is if somebody steals that, you can't change it. And so this is the fundamental weakness of biometrics. So this is interesting. I always wondered about the Starlink satellites. It turns out Starlink satellites are low Earth orbit and 340 miles up, and that means they will naturally decay and fall down within 5 years, which I'm glad to see. I'm surprised they put up with such a short lifetime, but probably in tech that's enough, because we saw this with the undersea cables. If you send internet traffic to Europe or to Asia, it goes through undersea fiber optic cables, and there have been about 19 generations of them, because every couple of years they improve the technology so a new one will be much faster. So they put down another cable that carries much more traffic. And that's the thing. I mean, like keeping an old computer going for a long time is kind of pointless because the new ones are so much better. And so I guess 5 years is what they plan. And now they have some satellites, I think 100 of them, have some kind of flaw where they're afraid they're going to lose the ability to control them, so they're bringing them out early. And the satellites have some maneuvering fuel. They need it because they'll collide with something else. There's all kinds of junk flying around. And so they have enough maneuvering fuel to fly down and burn out faster, and that's what they're going to do. Yeah?
We do it in a lower altitude is for latency.
Yes, it's good for latency, but it also means the satellites will have to be replaced pretty often. But I guess Starlink figures that 5 years is enough to justify the expense of it. And they make it really cheap by using reusable rockets and launching them like 10 or 100 at a time. So I'm sure they figured out the cost of it all. And anyway, so this is an interesting flaw. I remember I did a bunch of denial of service attacks 10 or 15 years ago. And so DNSSEC is a cryptographic system that is unfortunately very old and very complicated. It was an attempt to secure DNS servers against a Kaminsky attack. The Kaminsky attack was an earth-shaking attack found in around 2008 by Dan Kaminsky, may he rest in peace. And he found a way to fool DNS servers so that when they try to get data from another server, you could trick it into sending a false answer. So if you try to go to yahoo.com and you're a Comcast customer, the Comcast server doesn't know where Yahoo is, so it asks the authoritative Yahoo server, where's www.yahoo.com, and this attack could send a forged message that would fool a server like the Comcast DNS server into putting the wrong address on Yahoo. So you could reroute traffic on the internet to bad addresses. And to prevent that, this DNSSEC was developed. DNSSEC would cryptographically sign all the responses, and then you'd have to verify the signature by doing some cryptographic math on it. You get these long things. And it turns out that there is a way to send a response which is complicated for the server to resolve, where somehow this signature is resolved by another signature, and you have to dig through all these and solve all these problems. So they say, in fact, one packet can freeze up a DNS server for like hours as it tries to dig through this ways. And same thing's true of regular expressions, by the way. When people start configuring Snort to block network traffic, Snort has regular expressions, and if you try to write a regular expression, in fact, let me get one here, this is amazing. Regular expression to find a phone number, I think credit card numbers, unbelievable. Let's see if I can find one. Because it is amazing how complicated a regular expression it takes to do a really simple thing. And I wonder if there you are. Take a look at this. To detect a Discover card, you do all that. That is pretty bloody complicated. And it's complicated for the server too. So you can write a regular expression to identify a network packet, and it's pretty easy to write one that is so complicated that it takes a lot of CPU time to figure out if it matches that pattern. So that now you're trying to have all these packets come in from the network and it can't keep up, and so you fail to detect them. And the same thing's true of any kind of cryptographic system, and they found some kind of flaw like that in DNS. They're able to send a malicious DNS server that sends it confusing records that cause it to waste an incredible amount of time trying to decide if they're valid or not. So this is reminds me of the Kaminsky attack because it is a flaw not in the software but in the fundamental protocol. It is a design flaw in the protocol that they. So anyway, they already have patches out for some of the servers. So this also is being handled correctly, which was true of the Kaminsky flaw too. It's been known but a secret for a period of time. They told the DNS server makers a while ago and not the public. So they've quietly patched their stuff, so by the time the public finds out the details, most servers will be patched. This is a rare success of responsible disclosure. This usually does not happen. I know personally, I'm doing hundreds of these things. Usually when you tell a company, they ignore you, so you just go public, and then they get mad and yell at you. That's the normal process. Very few companies actually listen to private reports, but that's slowly improving. So they made a metamaterial, and unfortunately there's not a lot of details here, but they've made a metamaterial that is actually makes it possible to make one-way glass, where the light will go one way but not the other way. Current one-way glass is a half-silvered mirror. It's the same in both directions, but if one side is bright like outside and one side is dark like inside, it has the effect that people looking in from outside can't see you, and because too much of the outside light bounces off and mixes in with it. But this is apparently actually one-way glass, which sounds almost impossible. But I know another thing they've had working for about 5 years is the invisibility cloak from Harry Potter. But in both cases, the only practical application so far are microwave wavelengths. They have to miniaturize them more to get to optical wavelengths. But they're getting pretty interesting optical devices available. What is this, garbage? Okay. So this one here is the kind of thing you could worry about. So somebody used Proton Mail. Proton Mail is considered the best encrypted email service. If you sign up for Proton Mail, you can send email. It's end-to-end encrypted. Nobody can see what you're saying. So they used it to send bomb threats in India. And the Indian government responded by banning Proton Mail. Now, at first I thought this is completely stupid. They're not going to the attacker. But the fact is the Indian government has a policy of banning end-to-end encryption in all ways, which is something the U.S. government would like to do here. And the U.K. has been getting very close to doing in the UK, and they've had it for a long time in the United Arab Emirates. A lot of countries just don't think their citizens should have any right to privacy. For example, China, like the app I've been talking about in several of my classes, they force people to install this app, which means the cops can inspect everything on your phone at any time. This is what they believe. And of course, if they could do that, they could totally catch more criminals. But we're not willing to put up with that much privacy invasion over here. But anyway, in India they are, and so they're going to block Proton Mail, and apparently blocked a lot of other encrypted things. So it's interesting to watch this as you see the different decisions made. I remember in the UK, they started putting a whole lot of snooping in around the time of 9/11. And they said, because they had a lot of terrorism in the UK, a lot of bombs going off and stuff, and they interviewed people on the street, and they said, I don't care if the government reads my email. If that helps them catch the terrorist, I'm all for it. They don't have that opinion in America generally, but we don't have that much terrorism here. If we had like a 9/11 type event every year, our attitudes would probably change. And we would say, let the government spy on everything more because the terrorism is a larger threat. Anyway, so let me stop this one.